Rest area and truck stop employees, what's the most bizarre story you have heard? I worked at a gas station / truck stop for over a year in high school. I have lots of stories. So, one time I'm closing up the station. I was starting to count the till, before I turn on the security system and leave. I've got a wad of 20s when 4 Colombian pesos cars come ripping into our lot. I run to the windows, 2 cops go to the back and the other 2 position at the corners where it's hard to see them through the windows. Now, I'm an idiot high schooler, so I'm trying to look out the window grasping $300 in 20s. When I realize they've got weapons drawn and are trying to look at me, I put my hands up, cash in hand, and start yelling that I'm an employee. They let me unlock the door and come in. They were nice but clearly frustrated that I set off the alarm. I tell them 4 to 5 times that the alarm was not set, but they insist that I'm wrong and that they had a clear security report. So I took them to the panel, verified it was off. Then my smarts kick in. Hey guys, what address was the alarm for? 303 Baker. Why? That's not our address. That's ABC Supply a block north. They moved quickly to that business. I heard later that the safe was taken from that supply store. I've had guns drawn on me by 5 to 6 cops when I was driving near my house once. I gave one of them my ID and he says into his radio, "This guy's name is my name." Okay. He yelled to the other officers, "Wrong guy," and started to leave. I was like, what the fuck is the other guy wanted for? Should I stay home this weekend to prevent getting shot by mistake? Cop said he can't talk about an active investigation and dipped. The thing that pissed me off is that I was playing tennis for an hour and a half before that and there was a cop in his car glaring at me across the parking lot the entire time. The tennis court was otherwise completely empty besides my friend and me. He could have just asked for my ID there and then without risking the safety of anyone there, but they blocked off a busy road and held me at gunpoint instead. This one time a guy who works at the same plant as me, I barely know him, was driving and all of a sudden a cop appears and throws a spike strip in front of his car, after realizing that it wasn't the vehicle that they were after. He was hurried off the road and later given new wheels. I worked at a weigh station for big rigs. There were 2 of us at the station working nights waiting for trucks to pull onto the scale. If anything weighing more than a pound got on the scale, it would send an audible beep into the booth and light up the computers. If it wasn't a trucks, then most of the time it would be the wildlife wandering out onto the scale, which we would ignore then quickly go back to watching Netflix or whatever. One night though, it was something weighing 132 pounds. We couldn't see it from the windows, but checking the cameras we noticed it was a hunched over naked man shaking like a shitting dog and scratching the side of his face. While my coworker radioed for the state troopers, I used the intercom to tell him to get off of the scale. Instead he lurched on over and began licking the window. He did this until he was checked out by EMS and taken away by law enforcement for public intoxication. It was later discovered he was using meth. Years ago when I was a kid, we were traveling with my mom, her best friend and my sisters. We were pretty tired and pulled into a truck stop for some food and bathroom break. We walk in, my mom asks a guy where the bathrooms were, he points us in the right direction and off we toddle. We come out, take a seat and wait for the waitress to come take our order. She seems to be taking a while, but we figure she's probably busy and will come when she can. Eventually she comes over and tells my mom that everything is okay and the police are on their way. My mom, pretty confused, asks her what she means. Well, turns out we had walked into the middle of an armed robbery and my mom had actually asked the robber where the toilets were. No joke, the guy who robbed my gas station was polite AF. Dude comes in with a mask during opening shift and puts a duffel bag on the table. Then he cheerily says, "Good morning, sir. I'm here to rob you." My elderly co-worker asks if this is a joke, so the guy pulls out a Magnum 357 and says, "I'm afraid not." so if you would kindly empty the contents of the register into the bag, I'll be on my way. Both registers? Yes please. Not an employee, but a frequent cross-country traveler. Weirdest was pulling up to a truck stop to fill up in southeastern South Dakota during the height of the mayfly hatch, millions of bugs all over. I started filling up and was getting ready to clean my windshield, and I happened to look over across the way and there was some dude driving a big box truck in the diesel fueling area. He was scraping them off the front of his truck and eating them by the handfuls. Ah, the days before cell phones were a thing. It was honestly the single most memorable thing I've ever witnessed in my countless cross-country trips since the late 90s. I just stood there, mouth agape, not believing what I was seeing. And every time I remember it, I'm sad I didn't have a cell phone to record it, because it was just so crazy. I'm sure mayflies are nutritious and I'm not knocking cultures that eat bugs. But mayflies smell like fish feces to me, and eating them straight off the front of your car is just extra special. Not me, but my dad managed a truck stop for a year or so. At this truck stop drivers could get a shower, but it's timed since there are usually multiple people waiting to get one as well. One day a guy is showering and his time is up, but he didn't come out. One of the employees knocked and requested he come out so the next person could shower, but still no response. They eventually entered the shower to find the man dead. It turned out that he had suffered a major heart attack while he was in there. Another one, and apparently this is somewhat common, a truck transporting honeybees left the stop, but the queen from one of the hives had taken residence in or around the pump while the truck was stopped. They had to get a beekeeper out to capture and move the queen and her colony before they could let anyone near the fuel pumps. Worked at a highway fast food place for about 8 years on and off. One story has always been my favorite. The night the mop was stolen by the stoned guy. The store was just outside a small town that day beside the highway. One night it was about 11 p.m. and it had been quiet for ages. We had started to shut down and clean the dining room. There was only me and one other person working. We had done about half and were taking a break, having a chat behind the counter, killing time until we could officially shut and do the other half of the dining room. The front doors open and our immediate reaction is, ugh, customers. These customers stopped just inside the door and just stared. We realized they were locals and they were high as kites. One of them just stands in the doorway, looking around in stoned wonder. The other sees the mop bucket we had left out there, in preparation for doing the other half of the dining room. He proceeds to pick up the mop, walk a lap around the restaurant dragging it behind him on the floor, leaving a huge wet dirty trail. Then he and his mate turn and walk out the front door with the mop. It was one of those moments where you honestly don't know how to react. We just looked at each other and pissed ourselves laughing. We then discovered it was a huge problem. Turns out that was our only mop. We had to leave the floor dirty. Worst part was the restaurant manager was doing open the next morning. We left notes everywhere explaining what happened, but I still got a call at 5 a.m. bitching me out for leaving the store in such a state, even though she was the reason we didn't have a second mop, too expensive apparently. No one believed us, and we didn't have security cameras to back us up. Fast forward about 6 weeks. One of the locals comes to work, thankfully when my manager and me were both working, and he walks in carrying a mop, the mop that had been stolen. He found it in the bushes on the back path from the rest stop to the town. Even now, almost 20 years later, I'm friends with the guy I was working with and we often reminisce about the night the stoned guys stole our mop. So random. Up there with the night the cat got stuck in my engine. Worked in a sandwich restaurant in a truck stop. One day several years ago on one of my days off, one of our maintenance workers, we'll call him Michael, was doing his rounds changing trash cans in the truck parking lot. Michael supposedly happened across a 2 or 3 foot length of PVC with caps on either end. For most people, alarm bells should be going off. Not for Michael. He started lightly beating things with it and tossing it on the ground. like one would with a small branch or something. Guy takes it into the truck stop and throws it away in the garbage can under the cash register and forgets about it. Several hours later at shift change he's giving an informal report to the incoming shift manager and casually mentions that he found something like a pipe bomb or something in the lot and that he threw it away under the register. Shift manager goes white as a ghost and says there's a pipe bomb under the register? Michael says yeah. The shift manager immediately vacates the premises, herds all the employees and customers out, and phones the authorities. The volunteer fire department, which I happen to be a member of, got toned out to block traffic into the parking lot and keep people at a distance. Sheriff's department shows up, realizes this is above their pay grade, calls the state police. They quickly realize the same and call in the bomb squad from the nearest major city and the ATF. All these important people are slowly gathering in the parking lot a healthy distance away from the building while I keep having to run back and forth across the parking lot in the 95-degree heat in turnout gear to explain to pissed off truck drivers that no, they cannot go in the truck stop while there's a bomb inside, and no, I did not make that rule. The news ends up showing up. The ATF shows up. They suit up in bomb suits, walk in, carry the pipe bomb out, set it on the ground at the corner of two concrete walls of the building, run some detonation cord back to their truck, and set it off. The explosion was the size of a somewhat large firecracker. Michael got fired. Edit: it probably wasn't an actual bomb of any kind. Could have been a pipe full of welding rods. As far as I know, that cord will blow up anyway, so it could have just been that cord explosion and nothing else.